Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. A busy day in BC as we follow two developing stories. A decision on the Surrey police saga is expected today, and we'll go live soon to Solicitor General Mike Farnworth for the government's latest decision. We'll then discuss the outcome with our own Justin McElroy. And thousands of port workers across BC resumed their strike activity after failing to ratify a tentative deal that was reached through federal mediation. But is that latest strike action legal? I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Hi there. The Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth is on hand now to announce the province's decision on whether or not to direct the City of Surrey to move forward with the Surrey Police Services. We'll join the press conference now live.
Keeping people safe is not only my top priority, but it is my legal duty and responsibility. In all our communities across our province, people want to know if they can rely on the police to keep them safe. They want to know that when they call for help, our dedicated police officers will be there no matter the badge. Back in April, I presented two paths for the future of policing in Surrey. At that time, it was possible for the city to choose either path, to go back to the RCMP or to continue forward with the Surrey Police, provided they met mandatory conditions to keep people safe. One path was safer than the other, but both were possible. Now, today, we're in a different place. The city chose the path they wanted to take, and they presented their plan for how they proposed to do it. The question in front of me was, is their plan safe? Does it meet the mandatory requirements to ensure adequate and effective policing? Unfortunately, the City of Surrey has failed to meet mandatory requirements to go back to the RCMP. That puts people at risk. So today, I am directing the City of Surrey to move forward with the Surrey Police Service to keep people safe. It's just not safe to go backwards, and it's clear people in Surrey want this uncertainty over. Moving forward with the Surrey Police will prevent a crisis of policing in the City of Surrey without enough police officers on the ground to keep people in Surrey safe, and a reduction of police officers across the province. I have made this decision under Section 2 of the Police Act, which states that as Minister, I must ensure an adequate and effective level of policing and law enforcement is maintained throughout British Columbia. At this point, moving forward with the Surrey Police Service is the only path forward to protect the safety of the people of Surrey and across BC. I've said many times that as Solicitor General, I must be confident that the city's plan ensures adequate and effective policing in Surrey and throughout the province. Over the last number of months, we asked the City of Surrey to produce a plan that met mandatory conditions to keep people safe. A plan that did not rely on officers from other areas and that prevented a failure of policing in Surrey. I have reviewed the city's report on going back to the RCMP and discussed it with my professional public service. For the second time, the city has failed to demonstrate that moving back to the RCMP will be safe and will not impact other communities across our province. Without meeting the mandatory conditions, I am deeply concerned that if the city follows through on its decision, that there would be an exodus of Surrey Police Service officers from Surrey, and the RCMP would not have the ability to hire enough officers to adequately and effectively police Surrey, meaning officers would be pulled from other units, creating RCMP staffing deficits in other areas of the province. This means pulling officers from the major crime section and their unit that deals with organized crime. It means pulling officers from highway patrol, decreasing traffic enforcement and monitoring. These services are critical to the safety of everyone in British Columbia. And I know that the people in Surrey don't want to see officers pulled away from these crucial services. The city's plan to go back is just not safe. It puts people at risk. The debate over policing in Surrey has been highly charged and divisive. I know that this is an extraordinary use of my powers under the Police Act, and I did not make this decision lightly. I've spoken with Mayor Locke to explain my decision, The mayor doesn't agree with my decision, but that won't stop me from doing the right thing for the people of Surrey and across our province. However, I am committed to working with the City of Surrey and the Mayor and the Council as we move forward. As we move forward, it's important that we end this uncertain and divisive period. We have recommitted to providing the City of Surrey with $150 million to ensure costs are not passed on to business and residents as part of the transition. I'm also appointing Jessica MacDonald as an advisor to help complete the process of making the Surrey Police Service the police of jurisdiction in Surrey. She is a former Deputy Minister to the Premier of our province and a former President and CEO of BC Hydro. She is a leader in organizational change, negotiation, dispute resolution, and in driving reform. And finally, I plan to propose legislation in the fall to ensure that a situation like this never happens again. I also want to take a moment to thank the RCMP and Surrey Police Service officers who work every day to keep people and businesses in Surrey safe. I know that this has been a difficult, frustrating time for you and for your families. And to RCMP officers, this decision in no way is a comment on the excellent work that you do every single day. Whatever badge you wear, I know officers are dedicated to keeping people and our communities safe in Surrey and across the province. I also know that we can continue to rely on your professionalism and teamwork, and I deeply appreciate your service. More than anything, people in Surrey want this to be over. It is time to turn the page on this difficult chapter and come together to write a new one. I look forward to working with the city and our policing partners to make Surrey Police Service Surrey's police of jurisdiction. And I want to assure the people of Surrey and all British Columbians that I will continue to fulfill my duty to keep our community safe in Surrey and everywhere in our province. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. A reminder to media on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You'll be limited to one question and one follow-up. Please give me a wave in the room if you have a question. Our first question today goes to Richard Zisman, Global News.
How quickly do you anticipate the Surrey Police Service becoming the force of record in the community? And is there anything that can be done through the courts or through another municipal election that would further delay and complicate the decision that you've made today?
This decision is the final decision. The direction is clear. It's done under the authority of the Police Act, and we're very confident in the legal authority on which this decision is made. In terms of the transition itself, obviously, we want it to proceed in an orderly fashion. It will take some time. It will be gradual. The plan that has already been in place has been paused. And that is the plan that will take us to the full transition to the Surrey Police Service.
Can you tell us what Mayor Locke said to you when you gave her this news? And when you talk about new legislation, what sort of tools are you looking at to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, I'm sure Mayor Locke will tell you what she said to me later on. But I understand and I respect her position. She's not happy, and it's no secret that this has been a divisive issue, and she has a duty to the City of Surrey, and my responsibility is not only to Surrey, but also to the province. But I think what's important is that we want to work with Surrey. It's a growing community. It is the second largest community in the province. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of things it needs. There's a lot of work the province is doing already on other issues with them, and I want that to continue. The legislation, obviously, as I said, I don't think anyone wants to see this, any government be in this situation again. And my intention is to bring legislation in the fall that will ensure that does not happen. We will obviously engage in consultation with local government, with UBCM. I've already spoken to the president of UBCM and told her of that is our intention. At the same time, we also have been making changes, proposing changes for the fall in terms of the Police Act and around governance and such like. But I think one of the things, two areas, one may be that the act or changes could be in terms of a minister being able to get involved earlier in a decision such as this, but also to be able to request and ask for any and all documents and not have to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Next question comes from Katie DeRosa, Vancouver Sun.
Minister, why was Jessica McDonald selected for this position? Given that she was fired as BC Hydro CEO at the beginning of the NDP's mandate, and considering that right now will she be able to mend the relationship between the mayor of Surrey and the Surrey Police Union, given that the mayor blocked them on Twitter and hasn't been communicating with Surrey Police Service so far?
So on the appointment of Jessica McDonald, she is someone who has a thorough understanding of how government works, how institutions work, both at the provincial level and at the federal level. I think she has the skill set necessary to be able to do this important work, and I'm very pleased that she's agreed to do it, and I think she'll do a terrific job. She'll be working obviously with the Director of Police Services and with the city and the federal government and the RCMP. And as I said, I think she's got the skill set to do it.
What does this say about the larger role of the RCMP in BC, given your concerns about its staffing levels? You've previously said there's no plan to move to the provincial police force, but is this an indication that going forward, the RCMP will get out of local policing and focus on more national issues?
No, that's not what this decision is about. This is about Surrey and public safety in that community and across the province. I know that there are, discussions. Well, in my mandate letter, I have to review the all-party report on the reform of policing that we received and how we move forward on that. That's in my mandate letter. I know at the federal level, the federal minister has in his mandate letter to review contract policing. Those discussions have, are out there. But this is about Surrey. This is about the public safety in our province, and those issues of vacancies, for example, apply not just here in BC, but right across the province. And that's something that we have been working with the RCMP. We will continue to work with the federal government on because it's crucial that we get those addressed.
Next question comes from Rob Shaw, Check News.
Minister, do you regret not making this order earlier in the process and sort of allowing these dueling reports and NDAs and everything to end up where we are today, or do you feel that this was the only path you had?
This was the path that I had to take. The reality is that Surrey came forward and said that they wanted to go back to the RCMP as we're almost midway through a transition. They presented to me their I said I would need to have a plan. They presented that to me. It was analyzed by within my ministry. They came back and said, look, there are two ways in which we could do this. One is to continue with the Surrey Police Service. And at that time I said that was our strong recommendation. But if you want to go back to the RCMP, here are these binding requirements that you have to meet. So they came back with that report. We've done the analysis on it. And, no, it doesn't meet those requirements. And as I said, I am very concerned that if you have a mass exodus of Surrey Police Service officers, you don't have how are you going to restaff them? And taking them from, other communities, whether it's through overtime, whether it is taking resources from, highway patrol or major crime unit or other specialty units, that's not going to, that impacts other communities. And I said that cannot happen.
Could you expand on Richard's sort of question about the legislation that you would like to see this fall? Like in the future, if it passes and gives you the powers to prevent this from happening again, what would it mean for a Metro Vancouver municipality with the RCMP who might want to go to a municipal police force and the process that you would, or the ability that you would have to make that decision? And what would it mean for your powers for other municipalities like, Victoria and Esquimalt that are always fighting? What would it mean for the larger policing situation in the future? I think
two things. One, it's certainly not my intention to take away from local government powers, but I do think all of us, certainly the province and local governments, have learned a lot through this whole process. That there are some real challenges. We're already engaged in reforming the Police Act. And this has brought to light additional, I think, changes that need to happen. One, that a Solicitor General, when making a decision, should be able to access, information, all the reports necessary, without having to sign a non-disclosure agreement, for example. They may, and again, as I said, we need to have consultation and discussion with local government. They may be able to make it clear, right? Okay, local government, if that's what you want to do, understand if you're going down this path, you're going down this path, you're not going back. That may be, a change that would be a good thing to have in place. So the reality is, I think we've got to look at the lessons we've learned from here, work with UBCM, and bring forward legislation so that I think all of us, whether it's local government, whether it's the province, whether it's the RCMP, whether it's municipal police, don't want to be in a situation like this again.
And we are continuing to listen to Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth. He's just directed the City of Surrey to move forward with Surrey Police Services. He said the city failed to demonstrate that moving back to the RCMP would be safe and avoid affecting other communities in the province. So let's rejoin that press conference live now.
I've always been, I've always been very respectful to Surrey. I've not criticized, any individual. I stand ready, and we stand ready as a province to work with the city. I understand, the mayor's not being happy. I totally get that. But I also know this, as I said, Surrey is a growing community of almost 600,000 people, the second largest in the province, and may well end up being the largest in the province. There's a lot of areas where we need to work together, and we want to do that. Will it be easy? I know, right now, probably not. But I think the reality is we all want to do the best that we can for the people of our individual communities, of our province, and I don't think Surrey is any exception to that. I think the mayor wants to do the best she can for the city of Surrey. Certainly the province wants to do the best that we can for the people of Surrey, and we're committed to doing that.
Also, you've said throughout this process, or your decision, that public safety was is the primary reason why you've made it. Were there any instances or where you were concerned about public safety in Surrey?
One of the things that has during this whole process has been a superintending of the transition by my Director of Police Services, and I have very capable staff in the ministry. We've had strong communication with the RCMP, being kept aware of what's going on. And so to me, what's been important is ensuring that the plan that was in place was maintained, which it has been, and that we are able to, now that this decision I'm making today, that we will move forward on that plan.
Next, we'll go to the phones. We hear first from Mira Baines, CBC.
Sure. Thank you for taking my question, Minister. What level of support are you getting for the federal government for this decision, and what level of cooperation are you getting from the RCMP and the commanding officer here in British Columbia for this decision?
I've had good conversation already with Commanding Officer MacDonald here in BC. I expect and there will be good cooperation. I've made it clear that today's decision is not a reflection on the men and women who provide frontline policing services in our province. They do an absolutely incredible job. And I have nothing but respect for the work that they do. I also raised with him the appointment of Jessica MacDonald and how she will be working to make the transition work. I have spoken with my federal counterpart, Minister Mendicino, in Ottawa, and we have also had a good conversation, a good working relationship, and I expect full cooperation from the federal government and Public Service Canada as we move forward.
Mira, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, and this question just speaks to Mayor Locke's reaction to this decision. Sort of given the level of discourse just around this issue, are there measures that are going to be put in place that guarantee support for your decision? For example, what if the City of Surrey decides to pull funding from the Surrey Police Service? Is there anything that guarantees that there's going to be support from the City of Surrey for this decision going forward and supporting policing in that city through the SPS?
So this decision is made under the Police Act, and the Police Act sets out responsibilities and legal requirements that local governments have to follow when it comes to policing. There is a plan that is already in place, and that plan will have to be followed. At the same time, as I said, to the City of Surrey, we have committed that $150 million. That's also why Jessica McDonald has been appointed, which is to work with the parties to make sure that we are able to move things forward in a way that works for everyone.
So there you have it, the highly anticipated decision from Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth on policing in Surrey. And we have just heard he'll be announcing that he will be directing the City of Surrey to move forward with all of those decisions. So joining me now is, of course, CBC's own municipal reporter, Justin McElroy. So what do you make of things?
Yeah, this was not particularly a surprise, Amy, when you looked at all of the things that the province had been talking about in the last couple of months about vacancies in the RCMP across the province, of their skepticism of the City of Surrey's plan to go back to the RCMP. But after 3 months, we've gone basically from the province saying this is a recommendation to this is an order. The big question now is what Mayor Brenda Locke is going to do. Is she going to try and fight this? Is she going to contemplate legal action?
Right.
And what sort of support or not she has from both local RCMP leaders in Surrey as well from the federal government if she tries to stretch this out and find a narrow path to victory here. But more often than not, the vast majority of times when a province battles with a municipality, the province wins. We'll have to see what her response is in the hours to come as to whether this is the end of this debate or the start of a new chapter.
I mean, feasible. What would her option legally be? What sort of footing would she have?
She could argue that what Minister Farnworth said 3 months ago, which is that cities retain the ability to choose their police service that they wish, and that the province's argument that the safety of the province overall was imperiled by sticking with the RCMP did not meet the litmus test. That would be probably how it would go in court. The question is whether a court would agree with the province that, look, we gave them an out. We said, here are your guidelines. You failed to meet them. Therefore, we had no choice to act. Again, it's a very limited number of times when a court will say a municipality wins in these sorts of things. They're called creatures of the province for a reason, but this was her number one election promise. This is something that she's continued to fight about.
Right.
Even yesterday, she put out a tweet showing her support still for the RCMP, so we're really going to have to see what she says in the hours to come.
Yeah, and it's been incredibly contentious between her and the Surrey Police Services, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out if she does accept that they have to continue forward together.
She's accused the Minister of misogyny. Yes. She's blocked the Surrey Police Union on Twitter. She apparently hasn't had any meetings with the Surrey Police Service as well. She's been forthright in what she wants to do as a mayor. She's had a majority on council to get some of this through. The question is, how much does she fight it? And what sort of things does the government put in place with this promised legislation in the fall, where they say to prevent something like this happening again, sort of implies that the province isn't exactly pleased how the last 9 months has gone, but certainly whether that will have any implications for municipalities in the future.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see, and of course we'll get reaction later this afternoon from Mayor Locke, and I'm sure from other people involved in this whole very lengthy battle that perhaps will continue. We're going to break for news now, but we'll have you sticking around with us. We're going to have Surrey Councillor Linda Annis join us as well with her thoughts. But right now, we'll head to the 12:30 news with Zara Premji.
Good afternoon. As we just heard on BC Today, the City of Surrey has been directed to move forward with an independent police service despite the determination to stay with the RCMP. The BC government says it made the decision to avoid a crisis in policing in Surrey, which would have taken Mounties from other areas of the province. And port workers have issued 72-hour strike notice once again and could return to the picket line Saturday morning. This comes after job action was forced to end this morning. Around 7,400 workers walked off the job initially on July 1st and picketed for nearly 2 weeks. And BC's chief coroner says fentanyl continues to drive the toxic drug crisis, which has claimed more than 1,200 lives in the first 6 months of this year. 184 people died in June. And now taking a look at the BC forecast, poor air quality statements continue to cover many sections of the province due to, of course, wildfire smoke. On the North Coast, showers today with a high of 18, highs reaching 25 with smoke and sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, smoky with a high of 23. In the Kootenays, highs around 30. In the southern interior, sunny with a high of 31. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine and highs in the mid-20s. Back to you at BC Today, Amy Bell.
An exciting news day on many fronts, Zara. Thanks for that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and welcome back to BC Today. Thank you for joining us. Of course, on CBC Radio. We're also live streaming on CBC Vancouver YouTube and CBC Gem. We're taking a look at the very latest decision on the Surrey Police Services that has just come down. The province recommending that they continue ahead with Surrey Police Services. And joining us for more as we hear about this is once again our own Justin McElroy. So, thoughts? How you feeling? It's been a long road to get to this point.
It's been a few months, 5 years, if you want to draw it back to when Mayor Doug McCallum, then as a candidate, said Surrey deserves its own independent police force and elect me mayor, and we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
But look, I think you heard from the province there, as well as when you just look online in terms of what people are saying. Well, there's some people very committed to one option or the other. A lot of people are going, this has gone on for a long time. Yeah. It's costing the city an extra $8 million a month for every month that they have two police services that aren't moving one way or the other. And so they are keen to move on with this. They have told the city what they expect them to do now. Whether they do it or not and how timely will impact Surrey taxpayers in terms of what their budgets look like over the next couple of years. But this could have implications as well on a federal level, too. You think about the fact that Ottawa is reportedly thinking about having the RCMP transition away from contract policing on the ground. Surrey is by far and away the biggest local detachment for the RCMP in the country, by more than 400,000 people for municipalities. So there's a lot to consider here from a federal, a provincial, and a local angle. But again, we still need to hear from Brenda Locke in terms of what the city's next steps are going to be. That's going to determine a lot, at least in the short term, of where this story goes.
Of course. And we, of course, would love to hear from our audience. What are your thoughts on today's decision to continue through with Surrey Police? We'd love your thoughts at 1-800-825-5950. Locally, it's 604-669-3733. You can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Justin, how surprised are you at all, or if at all, by today's decision?
When you've read the tea leaves of the province over the past few months, it shouldn't surprise a heck of a lot of people.
Right.
Really, one could be surprised that it took this long to reach this conclusion based on the fact that Mayor Brenda Locke, when she was a candidate, said my number one priority is to try and keep the RCMP. But the province said that they had a process that they felt they needed to ethically and legally play out to allow the city of Surrey to show their plans in terms of how they would like to have the RCMP continue. They put in guidelines. They don't believe those guidelines were met, and so here we are today. But I think at the end of the day, if people have been watching what the federal government has been talking about, what the province has been talking about, it is hard to conclude that it wasn't expected that the province would want to continue on this transition that's been 4 years in the making and not do the reversal, no matter what Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke and a majority of her council have wished for.
We'll actually bring in one of the members of Surrey Council, Linda Annis, joining us today. Good afternoon, Councillor. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well, and you?
I'm doing well. How are you feeling after the decision that was just came down from Solicitor General Mike Farnworth?
It's been 4 long years, and we've been in such a state of flux around the whole policing transition. I'm feeling good that we finally have arrived at a decision, and that I do hope that the residents of Surrey and all of council, whether they supported this in the beginning or not, get behind it, and we need to move forward and get on with other very important businesses here in Surrey.
Have you personally spoken with the mayor yet, with Mayor Locke, regarding her thoughts on the decision as well?
I have not spoken with Mayor Locke today at all. I don't know what her thoughts are at this point in time, but I do hope, though she was very supportive of keeping the RCMP in Surrey, now that the decision has been made by the Solicitor General, that we move on and get on with other business. We've been neglecting a lot of other very important things here in Surrey that we need to do, and this has been quite a distraction for council.
Right. So regardless of the decision, you were just more focused and wanting things to be resolved, put away, and move forward. But do you really think that's what's going to happen? Do you think this is sort of the end of this long saga that people in Surrey have had to be dealing with for so long?
I sure hope it is. As Minister Farnworth has indicated, the cost and how it's been reported that we are spending more than $8 million each and every month. So since this current council has been elected, we've spent $70 million on nothing, just in this state of limbo. We need to get on with whatever we're going to do. And I do hope that council gets behind it and we don't waste more taxpayers' money as we continue in a state of flux. I think we need to just move on and deal with the deck that we've been given.
All right. And Justin, I'll turn to you now. Do you think that's possible, that people can sort of say, all right, then we're just going to put that aside, move forward, on to the next thing? Or will it be hard to sort of get closure on this?
No, politicians always move on very quickly, right?
Fair enough.
No, I mean, this is going to be the big question for Mayor Locke and her party, how much they want to fight this, how much they consider the chances of them winning any sort of legal battle here, whether they want to add up the amount. Councillor Annis there just said $70 million. If we're still talking about this 4 or 5 months down the line, she'll be saying $100 million. Whether the city wants to have that sort of internal strife in council through this as well, which cost Mayor McCallum a bunch of political capital when he was in charge as well. They will have to make those trade-offs, and no doubt they've already had some of those conversations that have been happening. One thing that's going to be worth looking at is both for the RCMP in terms of local commanding officers as well as on the federal level, how much support they give towards her in the hours and days to come, versus saying, you know what, we tried to make this happen, it just didn't work. That could provide hints as to whether the mayor feels boxed in and feels that she has to admit defeat on this topic, or whether she thinks there's a sliver of chance to fight. But these are the things that she'll be considering, and it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And Councillor Annis, do you have any thoughts, sort of amongst council? Is there perhaps more a general sense that this needs to be moved forward further, or is it perhaps time to look at other issues that they can unite behind?
Well, I think certainly we need to be looking at other issues that we can unite behind. We've been so singularly focused on this police transition, but most importantly, I think what we need to be doing is listening to what the residents are saying. And while 4 years ago or 3 years ago, many people had very specific ideas about whether it should be the RCMP or the Surrey Police Service, I think people now have just come to the decision that they want to make sure that we're safe here in Surrey, no matter what stripe is on the leg, and they just want it dealt with. And I think we need to move on, having, obviously, making sure that we know that the Surrey Police Service are ready to go, and we need to have a smooth transition from here on and get it done.
And Solicitor General Farnworth did say that part of the decision was that he didn't feel that it was in the safety's interest for Surrey. Do you feel that Surrey could have done more to demonstrate that the RCMP was the safer choice, or in fact, should we be looking at the sewer police as the safer decision?
Well, I think it comes down to really the RCMP, unfortunately, have a lot of empty vacancies throughout British Columbia. I believe the number that was quoted is 1,500 vacancies throughout British Columbia. And as I understand it, Minister Farnworth's concern is that if we start moving RCMP into Surrey to fill the vacancies in Surrey and to staff back up, that it would jeopardize public safety in other areas. And I would concur with that thought process. We are short RCMP members here in Surrey because we are partway through a transition, and we know provincially we are short 1,500.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Councillor Annis. I really appreciate it. It's been a busy day for everybody in Surrey, I can imagine, so very much appreciated. That is Surrey City Councillor Linda Annis. And of course, we would love to hear your thoughts. You can call us 1-800-825-5950, locally 604-669-3733. We do have a call now from Tasha in Vancouver. Hi, Tasha. Thanks for calling.
Oh, hi. This is such a long-awaited a decision.
It has been a long one.
I totally concur with Mike Farnworth, and I hope that the people of Surrey will be able to move forward and that their government will get on board here. One of the things I heard Wally Opal say yesterday in conversation with Gloria Makarenko was that if they go with the Surrey Police Service, that means local governance, right? A local police board and one thing or another, but with the RCMP, decisions are made in Ottawa. And I think that's an important part of, democracy, right? To have the police accountable, to have a local board. And also the RCMP is in big trouble. They have a bad reputation. And I think having a police force that, represents your community and is attuned to local issues. I mean, I came from Toronto originally. There was no RCMP. There was a Metropolitan Toronto Police. I mean, it just seems to make sense. But the big thing is to get on with it, right, and to ensure people are safe. And council, focus on something else. Are there not a bazillion issues like homelessness, hunger, climate change? Like, let's get on with it.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for calling in and sharing that with us. And Justin, we'll go back to you now, sort of with any final thoughts, just moving forward. It's been a very, as we said, contentious between the Surrey Police and Mayor Locke, and there's obviously a lot of bad blood. How do you think that's going to impact them going forward if, in fact, she accepts that Surrey Police is what's going to be taking care of her city?
Well, and as you indicate, that may not be the case. We're going to see
Very
that.
possible.
But if she does, look, Surrey is the second biggest city in the province. It has a budget of close to $1 billion.
Right.
There are a lot of things on the plate, and the mayor only has a 5-4 majority on council. So she only won with 28% of the vote. It was a narrow victory. There's only a limited amount of political capital she has here, right? The question is going to be, we see what happens in a lot of municipalities when they get focused on one controversy for a long period of time, where it's very close, where things become full of animosity for years and years to come. Often that doesn't work out very well for any of the politicians involved when the next election comes about.
Right.
The question is going to be, what is Mayor Locke's leadership style? If she chooses to fight this is one thing, and we'll see how that plays out. But if she chooses to pivot, how does she pivot? Where does she put her focus? How does she try and mend relations with the provincial government after calling the public safety minister a misogynist a couple of months ago? These are going to be very interesting questions, along with just the on-the-ground issues of how do you fully make this transition happen one way or to the other. Right. And I'm sure for lots of Surrey homeowners, what their property taxes are going to be looking like in the next couple of years, because this will cost money. Part of the reason of going to sticking with the RCMP is that on the whole, they tend to be cheaper than local police forces. Lots to consider.
Right. I have a feeling you're going to be considering much of that for the rest of the day.
It's quite possible.
And of course, we'll keep everybody posted and updated on this story as it progresses throughout the day on our various shows. But thank you, Justin, for giving us that sort of fresh out of the gates perspective.
Thank you.
And that is our CBC's municipal reporter, Justin McElroy. And of course, this was not the only exciting story today. Port workers in BC could be back on strike as early as Saturday. Now, late this morning, the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Canada served the BC Maritime Employers Association with a 72-hour strike notice. For the second time, it comes after workers walked off the job yesterday afternoon when the union's leadership rejected a federally mediated and tentative agreement. Canada's Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan called that action illegal. In a tweet, he said the Canada Industrial Relations Board, which is an independent body created to keep industrial peace, this morning ruled that the International Longshore and Warehouse Union cease and desist from participating in any strike action. Because the union did not provide 72-hour notice, the strike is illegal. The latest work stoppage caused anger among politicians in Ottawa, and there are now growing cries for the federal government to introduce and pass back-to-work legislation. Speaking today, the federal transport minister, Omar Alakabra, said they're looking at all options to end the dispute.
My patience has run out. The option of what options are before us, those are the discussions that we're having today. But my patience, personal patience, has run out over the last couple of months of risk of disruption, then 13 days of disruptions to our largest export and import gateway to the world. We really have a responsibility to act and to do something, as I said, to protect Canadians' interest and Canadian economy.
The federal Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, is also speaking out about this today, and he wants the federal government to take action to bring the dispute to a close.
His Labour minister pumped his fist in the air and declared victory, saying the strike was over and that he should deserve a big pat on the back. Well, we learn now he was wrong. The strike was not over. Justin Trudeau must do his job and end this strike immediately because of the massive cost to workers, consumers, and businesses. And we're calling on him to deliver a plan to end this strike within the next 24 hours.
So we're asking you about this today. Should the federal government step in and order workers not to strike? What do you think needs to happen to resolve this dispute? And if it's impacting you directly, tell us how. Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now is Rob Mickleborough. He is a labor historian, former labor reporter with outlets like the Vancouver Sun, The Province, and CBC. Hi, Rod. How are you?
Amy, how are you?
I'm doing great. A busy news day across the province. How are you?
Very busy.
Yeah, very. So picket lines are down again after Minister O'Regan called the strike illegal. So what do you make of these latest updates?
Well, it's hard to follow. As a grizzled labor reporter, I've of many years standing, I've really never seen anything like it. The picket lines went up, then they came down, then they went up again. Now they're down again.
Yeah.
And now they're slated to go up again Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So it's a very odd situation. I mean, there are real workers involved and there are real issues, but it's kind of quite a bizarre situation, I have to say.
And do you think they expected that response from the labor minister, or was it it almost seemed like a little case of each other trying to sort of call each other's bluff in a sense?
Well, I was surprised by this ruling by the Canada Industrial Relations Board that declared the strike illegal because 72-hour strike notice had not been issued. And I'm not that familiar with federal labor law. I'm more familiar with provincial labor law. But it seemed to me that the original 72-hour strike notice that had been issued would still be in place because there had been no signed collective agreement.
Right.
So there was no need to issue it a second time. But as we know, the Canada Industrial Relations Board saw fit to declare the strike illegal on the grounds that it needed to be issued again. And what I find interesting about this is picket lines are down again, and they are scheduled. 72-hour strike notice has been now issued for a second time, and that expires Saturday morning. It gives everybody a bit of a cooling off period because we've got this time from now until Saturday morning to see if there could any way out of this situation, which I think it caught everybody off guard also when the union's bargaining caucus rejected the terms of the settlement that everyone assumed would go through. So I'm not sure what it would take to settle to make it an acceptable agreement,
Right.
or whether the minister will have to order an end to the strike through legislation. But in the next couple of days, all that will become clear.
Right. Well, and how much pressure is the government sort of under to enact some back to work legislation? Because we keep hearing about
tremendous
the
pressure.
millions of dollars, billions of possible dollars that the country is losing because of this.
Sure, absolutely. And that pressure, which they were under all the way through the first 13 days of the strike, is now just going to be amplified. And I actually gave the labor minister a lot of credit, Seamus O'Regan, for resisting all that pressure and letting the parties settle it on their own through collective bargaining, which is always the best way to resolve these disputes. And then when he found that really the parties did not seem that far apart, he ordered his mediator to recommend terms of the settlement, gave the parties 24 hours to agree or disagree. It appeared that they had agreed and that the strike was over, and without any possibility of negotiating, of legislating an end to the strike, which clearly he had in his back pocket if the parties had not accepted that. But still, I thought he handled the situation very, very well. And privately, I can just imagine what he's saying. Probably not very printable.
I imagine private words are often very different than the news
Because
releases.
they can't let the strike go on. It's very clear that the federal government, if those picket lines do go up on Saturday, that they will be legislating an end to the strike.
Right. Do you think that this is, you said you just commended Minister O'Regan for giving them the space to talk and come to a conclusion. Do you think perhaps that wasn't the best idea, that perhaps they should have come in hard right from the very beginning and not risk losing anything?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I like collective bargaining to work. And, if the government is always legislating an end to the strike, if one side perceives that's an advantage, there's no incentive for them to bargain and to come to a reasonable settlement. And, there was enormous pressure, as we've talked about, for the labor minister and the federal government to intervene.
Of course.
But he resisted that. And I think that's better for the parties. It's better for the long-term industrial relations harmony on the port. And legislation right off the bat, the long term, it always has an impact that's not good because it takes away the incentive for the parties to negotiate on their own.
Right. And this has been a year of, so many labor disputes. So, would any back to work legislation sort of complicate any future labor action?
Well, and that's a good point. And I think it might. And also, you sometimes if you legislate back to work too quickly, when emotions are still high among the workers, say, you could end up with an illegal strike, which they defy the back to work legislation, and then you're really in the soup. And this avoids that. And I hope we're not heading to that, depending on what happens, in the next few days.
Okay.
Because there are high emotions, obviously, among the Longshore members, because their caucus voted this down, and so they weren't, they're feeling strongly about their issues.
Right. And I would think on both sides, today's events have just have made it even, clearer that they're far apart for everybody.
Well, I don't think they are that far apart. And according to the Tyee, the vote in the caucus was quite close.
Okay.
So it's not like it's 90% against. There are a lot of members that support the agreement. It hasn't gone to the overall membership too, which is also kind of interesting. And at some point, it's going to have to go to them.
Right.
But I don't think they are that far apart. The lengthy agreement may be the issue. They got a 4-year agreement for a union with the rapidly changing economy, inflation, and everything sort of going crazy. That seems like a long time to be locked in. And, maybe there's a compromise there for a 3-year agreement, which might be a bit more satisfactory.
Right. Okay. So I was going to ask you, why you would think that the union would ultimately reject an agreement, but it could just be they did not want to be locked into any such deal.
I think that was a big part of it. And I don't know what the language is on this issue of contracting out. I'll just mention it without going into detail.
Okay.
May not just have been quite what they expected.
Okay, so we'll just wait and see. Aside from legislation, what other options does Labor Minister Seamus O'Regan have? If he doesn't want to take that big step of back to work legislation, is there anything else that he can do to sort of sway things?
Well, I think he can go behind the scenes, and
Okay.
talk to the union and say, look, why was this rejected? What would it take to settle it, and see if they can sort of work something out, if it wouldn't take too much, just a little, a little incentive there that isn't that major, and maybe they can settle it. But they do have this cooling off period, and I think that's very good. That Thursday, Friday, the rest of today, etc. Well, that gives everybody a chance to just take a step back, breathe again, and see, well, how can we settle this?
Right. I mean, in a sense, you are talking from experience. You've covered many labor disputes. How would you say this strike compares to any similar disputes that you have covered in the past? Are you able to sort of say, yeah, I think this will happen? Or, is this one kind of anything goes?
Well, it's sort of gone off the rails from the tradition.
Definitely felt like that today.
The first 13 days were it's a big important strike because of the impact it has on the economy, and it impacts across Canada. But in terms of the negotiations, it was reasonable. The employers were hard-nosed, the union was hard-nosed, they were going at each other, and then finally they found their way back to the bargaining table, and with some a nudge by the federal labor minister, an agreement seemed to be reached. And then it just everyone thought it was over because the union took their picket lines down, which to me indicated there was kind of acceptance of this agreement. But that did not turn out to be the case. And I think this puts it in an area where it has certainly surprised me, in spite of, as all you said, as you mentioned, the many labor disputes I've covered in the past. This is a kind of a new one.
Yeah, I think it definitely took a lot of people in the newsroom by surprise a little bit as well. Do you think this will sway, I guess, public support at all? Because there does tend to be a point in every dispute where they might lose a little bit of support at a certain point. Could this be it for some people, sort of saying, come on, guys, just settle? You were nearly there.
Well, I think it will surprise the public, and there's sympathy for unions that maybe wasn't there before because of inflation, and everybody accepts that unions have lost ground and workers have lost ground because of inflation and the desire to make up what they've lost. I think the public can understand that.
Okay.
They can also understand automation, which is another issue on the ports.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue that we don't have time for today.
No, we don't.
Listen, Rod, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry we're tight for time, but it's been one of those days. That's Rod Mickleborough, former labor reporter with outlets like the Vancouver Sun, The Province, and CBC. And that is our show for today. Woo, a busy one. My thanks to everyone who called in, who got this show together. You can download our podcast at BC Today. I'm Amy Bell in for Michelle Elliott. We'll see you tomorrow.